care more to be loved. I want to be loved.
That is not the same as loving.
There is a myth that has haunted me for years. Eros, the god of love, visited a mortal woman named Psyche every night, but with one condition: she could never see him. They made love in complete darkness. She knew him by touch, by voice, by the weight of his body beside hers, never by image. And they were happy. But Psyche had sisters, and her sisters planted a doubt. How can you love someone you have never seen? How can you trust what you cannot verify? What if he is a monster? What if he is hiding something? You need to see. You need to know. So one night, while Eros slept, Psyche lit an oil lamp. She saw him. He was beautiful, more beautiful than she had imagined. She leaned closer, wanting to see more, and a drop of hot oil fell from the lamp onto his shoulder. He woke. He saw that he had been seen, and he fled. The love that had flourished in darkness could not survive the light. I think about this myth every time I catch myself composing a caption for a moment. I have not finished living. The lamp is always lit now. We live in permanent illumination. And Eros, I suspect, has been fleeing for years. In 1967, a French philosopher named Guy Debord published a book called The Society of the Spectacle. In it, he made a prediction that seemed paranoid at the time. He said that eventually, everything that was once directly lived would become mere representation, that we would stop experiencing life and start watching ourselves experience it, that we would become both the actors and the audience of our own existence. This was theory in 1967. It is Tuesday now. You do not live your life anymore. You document it. The dinner does not exist until the photo is taken. The trip did not happen without the stories. The relationship is not real. You have become the director, the cinematographer, and the star of a film that no one asked to see. And somewhere along the way, you forgot that the film is not the same as the life. I noticed this in myself a few years ago. I was at a concert and I realized I was watching the entire thing through my phone screen, not to record a memory, to prove I was there, to have evidence, to show an audience that was not in the room but was somehow more present than the music. I put the phone away, and I felt something I had not felt in months. I felt like I was actually there, not performing, being there. But the impulse came back. It always comes back. The thought that flickers through your mind without permission. This would make a good post. This moment is content. This experience is raw material for the image of my life that I am constructing for people I barely know. Debord called this the spectacle. He said the spectacle is not a collection of images. It is a social relationship between people that is mediated by images. Read that again. The spectacle is not the screens. It is what the screens have done to the space between us. Before the spectacle, you had experiences, and then you told people about them. The experience came first. The representation came second. There was a gap between living and sharing. The spectacle collapsed that gap. Now the representation comes first. You think about how you will share the experience before you have it. You frame the moment for an audience before you live it. The image is not a memory of the event. The image is the event. The event is just raw material for the image. I see this in the way people plan vacations. They choose destinations based on how they will photograph. They research angles. They scout locations. The trip is a production. The photos are the product. The actual experience of being there is almost incidental. And relationships have become the same. The couple photo is not a memory of the relationship. The couple photo is the relationship. The curated image of togetherness is more real than the messy reality of two people trying to share a life. De Boer predicted that the spectacle would eventually consume everything, that there would be no outside to it, no space that was not performance, no moment that was not content. He was writing in 1967. He did not have a smartphone. He could not have imagined Instagram or TikTok or the infinite scroll, but he saw where we were going. And he was terrified. When you are with someone you love, how many people are actually in the room? This is not a riddle. It is a serious question. Because I suspect the answer is never two. The answer is you, the person in front of you, and the invisible audience you are always, on some level, performing for. The imaginary crowd that will see the photo, the followers who will read the caption, the friends who will hear the story later, the version of yourself that exists in other people's minds and needs to be maintained, updated, fed, with evidence. This is the third person in every room, the phantom audience, the presence of everyone who is not there. And you cannot be intimate with someone while you are performing for someone else. Intimacy requires a closed room, a space where no one is watching, a moment that belongs only to the people inside it. But you have forgotten how to close the room. The door is always open. The audience is always present. Even when you put the phone down, the phone is still there. The possibility of documentation hovers over every moment like a ghost. I watched a couple at sunset once. They were at a beautiful overlook, the kind of place you travel far to see, and they took 47 photos. I counted. They adjusted angles, switched phones, tried different poses. They documented the sunset from every possible perspective. And not once did they look at each other. They were there to prove they had been there. Together, in love. At sunset, the evidence was more important than the experience. The image was more real than the moment. I do not say this to judge them. I say this because I have been them. Because you have been them. Because we are all, on some level, performing our lives for an audience that is not in the room. And you cannot love someone while you are performing. Love requires presence, and presence requires the absence of the audience. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han writes about something he calls the agony of Eros. He argues that love is dying in our time, not because we have become cruel, but because we have become transparent. Love, Han says, requires what he calls negativity. It requires an other, someone who is genuinely different from you, someone you cannot fully know, someone who resists being consumed. But we live in a society of positivity, a society that wants everything visible, accessible, available. A society that treats mystery as a problem to be solved rather than a condition to be cherished. The erotic, Han says, is rooted in what is hidden, the veil, the shadow, the part of someone that you cannot see. Desire is born in the gap between what you know and what you do not know. It lives in the darkness where Eros visited Psyche, but the screens have flooded everything with light. You can see someone's entire history before you meet them. Their photos, their friends, their likes, their location history. You can know them before you encounter them. You can consume them before you touch them. And what you can fully consume, you cannot desire. This is the paradox. The more you know about someone, the less you can want them. The profile kills the fantasy. The complete picture eliminates the mystery. Stalking someone online is the opposite of falling in love with them. I have felt this. The strange deflation that happens when you know too much too soon. When the person in front of you has already been reduced to data. when you have seen their best angles, their curated moments, their performed self, and now you are meeting the actual person, and they seem somehow less real than their image. The image came first. The person is just the disappointment that follows. Hans says that love requires the courage to accept what is hidden, the willingness to not know, the ability to let someone remain opaque, mysterious, other. But we have lost that courage. We want transparency. We want access. We want the lamp lit at all times. And Eros keeps fleeing. Han goes further. He says that transparency is the enemy of the erotic. Think about what makes something erotic. It is not full exposure. It is the interplay between what is shown and what is hidden. The suggestion, the veil, the glimpse. Pornography is not erotic. It is too visible, too available, too transparent. There is nothing left to imagine, nothing left to desire. Everything is already given. Eroticism requires withholding. It requires a no that makes the yes meaningful. It requires boundaries that create the possibility of crossing them. But we have built a culture that treats boundaries as problems, that sees withholding as dishonesty, that demands access to everything. We want to see all the photos, read all the messages, know all the history. We want the complete picture, the full transparency, the total access. And then we wonder why desire dies, why the person who was so intriguing online becomes so ordinary in person, why the relationship that started with such intensity fades into something flat and routine. The intensity was in the not knowing. The desire was in the gap. The eroticism was in the darkness. Fill the gap with information, flood the darkness with light, and you kill the very thing you were seeking. This is not an argument for deception. It is an argument for mystery, for letting some things remain unknown, for resisting the urge to investigate, to verify, to consume everything about someone before you have even touched them. Psyche lit the lamp because she could not tolerate not knowing, and that need to know, that compulsion toward transparency, cost her everything. Here is something I have noticed about myself that I am not proud of. I am better at seeming lovable than at being lovable. I know how to present myself, how to select the right photos, craft the right messages, project the right image. I know how to be interesting in text, how to time my responses, how to maintain the appearance of a person worth knowing. But this performed self is not the self that can be loved, because the performed self is not real. It is a product, a brand, a carefully managed image designed to attract and retain attention. And you cannot love a brand. You can only consume it. This is what the screens have done to us. They have taught us to treat ourselves as products in a marketplace of attention, to optimize our presentation, to A/B test our personalities, to think of relationships as engagement metrics. There is a deeper problem here. The screens have made us narcissists, not in the colloquial sense of being vain, in the clinical sense of being unable to see past our own reflection. The myth of Narcissus is relevant here. He fell in love with his own reflection in a pool of water. He could not look away. He could not see anything else. He starved to death staring at himself. Social media is the pool. The feed is the reflection. And we are all Narcissus now, staring at the image of ourselves that we have constructed, unable to look up. This is the connection to Eros and Psyche. Narcissus and Echo are part of the same story. Echo loved Narcissus. She followed him through the forest, but he could not see her. He could only see himself. Echo faded away until only her voice remained. She became nothing but repetition. a reflection of others' words because she had no words of her own. This is what happens in the attention economy. You become either Narcissus or Echo, either staring at your own reflection or fading away, because no one is looking at you, either performing or disappearing. Neither can love. Narcissus cannot see the other. Echo has no self to offer. Love requires two people who are neither Narcissus nor Echo, two people who can look away from their own reflections long enough to see someone else, two people who have selves to offer that are not just reflections of what the audience wants. But the screens keep pulling us back to the pool, keep forcing us to look at ourselves, keep asking, how does this make me look? How many likes? How many followers? Who is watching? And while we are asking those questions, Eros is fleeing. The language gives it away. We talk about our personal brand, our reach, our followers. We use marketing vocabulary to describe human connection. And then we wonder why connection feels so hollow. I spent years building an image of myself that I thought was lovable, and then I realized that the image was a wall. The better I got at projecting the right self, the harder it became for anyone to reach the actual self. The performance was so convincing that even I forgot there was something behind it. Vulnerability does not perform well. Insecurity does not get likes. The messy, contradictory, uncertain parts of yourself, the parts that most need to be loved, those are the parts you learn to hide. And so you become a smooth surface, optimized for attraction, incapable of connection. Because connection requires cracks. It requires openings. It requires showing someone the parts of yourself that are not ready to be seen, the parts that are still under construction, the parts that might drive them away. But driving them away is the risk of love, and the screens have taught us to minimize risk, to hedge our bets, to never fully commit to anything that cannot be undone. Why do you prefer texting to calling? Be honest. It is not because calling is inconvenient. It is because calling is dangerous. When you text, you have control. You can edit before you send. You can craft the perfect response. You can seem wittier, calmer, more articulate than you actually are. When you call, you lose control. Your voice might shake. You might say the wrong thing. You might reveal something you did not mean to reveal. And when you are physically present, when you are in the same room, the same bed, the same moment, you lose control entirely. The body cannot be edited. The face cannot be filtered. The tremor in your hand is visible. The catch in your voice is audible. This is why screens feel safer. They give you control. They let you manage the interaction. They protect you from the terrifying spontaneity of actual presence. But love is not safe. Love is the surrender of control. Love is letting someone see you before you have had a chance to prepare. The body is the problem. The body cannot be edited. In text, you are pure mind, pure intention. You can choose every word, delete every mistake, present exactly the version of yourself you want to present. In person, you are flesh, you sweat, you stutter. Your stomach makes sounds. Your hands do not know where to go. The body is always betraying you, revealing things you did not mean to reveal. This is why physical presence has become so terrifying. Not because we have become antisocial, because we have become so accustomed to the edited self that the unedited self feels unbearable. I notice this when I meet someone I have only known online. There is always a moment of adjustment, a kind of disappointment, even when they are exactly as they seemed. Because the physical person is messier than the digital one, more awkward, more present, more real. And real is harder than curated. The body remembers things. The body carries history. The body shows up whether you want it to or not. In digital space, you can always log off. Close the app, ghost, disappear. The exit is always available. In physical space, you are committed. You are there. Leaving is visible. Staying requires something from you. This is why screens feel safer. They give you the exit. They let you manage your exposure. They protect you from the terrible vulnerability of being in a room with someone and having nowhere to hide. Sherry Turkle, who has studied how technology affects relationships for decades, writes about this. She says we are increasingly choosing connection over conversation. And connection, in her vocabulary, is the mediated, controlled, manageable kind of contact that screens provide. Conversation is the messy, unpredictable, vulnerable kind of contact that happens face to face. We are choosing the simulation over the real thing. And then we wonder why the real thing has started to feel unbearable. I have watched people break up over text because they could not face the conversation in person. I have watched people declare love over message because they could not say it out loud. I have watched people conduct entire relationships through screens, meeting rarely, touching never, maintaining a connection that had no physical reality at all. This is not intimacy. This is the performance of intimacy, the image of intimacy, the Instagram version of intimacy. And it is not enough. The body knows it is not enough. The body keeps score. The body remembers what it means to be touched, to be held, to be present with another person in unmediated space. But we keep choosing the screens anyway, because the screens are safe, and safety has become more important than love. There is another way the screens have rewired us, and it might be the most damaging of all. The philosopher Zygmunt Bauman called it liquid love. He argued that we have started to treat relationships the way we treat consumer goods, as investments to be optimized, as products to be comparison shopped, as commitments that should always be reversible in case something better comes along. The dating apps did not create this. They revealed it. They made visible a logic that was already operating beneath the surface. When you can swipe through hundreds of potential partners in an hour, something changes in your brain. You start to see people as options, as possibilities, as profiles to be evaluated rather than humans to be encountered. And there is always another option. There is always another swipe. There is always the possibility that the next profile will be better than the one in front of you. This is the FOMO of love. The fear that commitment means missing out. The terror of choosing one person and thereby losing access to everyone else. In a world of infinite options, choosing feels like losing. And so you do not choose. You keep your options open. You hedge your bets. You maintain connections without making commitments. You want all the benefits of love with none of the risks. But love is risk. Love is choosing one person and letting the other options fade. Love is burning the ships. Love is saying, I do not need to know if there is someone better. This is my choice. This is my person. This is enough. The screens make that kind of commitment feel irrational. Why limit yourself? Why close doors? Why choose when you can keep browsing? And so we keep browsing. We keep swiping. We keep the door open. And we wonder why we feel so alone. The person in front of you is competing with every person you have not yet met. And that is a competition no one can win. The real cannot compete with the hypothetical. The actual cannot compete with the possible. Bauman wrote about this before dating apps existed. He saw it in the logic of consumer capitalism. The same logic that makes you dissatisfied with your phone because a newer model exists. The same logic that makes you restless in your apartment because a better one might be available. The same logic that makes you unable to commit to anything because commitment means foreclosing options. We have applied this logic to people, and people are not products. People do not get better with each new version. People are not interchangeable units to be comparison shopped, but the apps train your brain to see them that way. The swipe is a judgment. The profile is a product listing. The match is a transaction. The entire architecture is built on the assumption that people are inventory to be sorted, filtered, and selected. And once you start seeing people as options, you cannot stop. The lens changes everything. Even when you are with someone, you are aware of all the someones you are not with. Even when you choose, you feel the weight of all the choices you did not make. This is not freedom. This is paralysis disguised as freedom. This is the inability to commit disguised as keeping your options open. This is loneliness disguised as possibility. The only way out is to choose. Not because you have found the perfect person. There is no perfect person. But because choosing is how you create depth. Choosing is how you build something that cannot be built while you are still browsing. Choosing is how you close the door so that intimacy can grow in the enclosed space. But choosing feels like dying. And we have been trained to avoid death at all costs. I want to pause here and say something uncomfortable. Because everything I have said so far implies that there is a way back. That we can unlearn what the screens have taught us. That the capacity for love is sleeping somewhere inside us, waiting to be reawakened. But what if that is not true? What if the damage is deeper than we want to admit? What if there is a generation that has never known anything else? Children who grew up with tablets in their hands, who learned to relate through screens before they learned to relate through touch, who have never experienced the kind of intimacy that requires darkness, invisibility, the absence of the audience. The statistics are not comforting. Young people are having less sex than any generation in decades. They are entering relationships later or not at all. They report higher levels of loneliness, despite being more connected than any humans in history. This is not correlation. This is something structural. Something has changed in the wiring. I talked to a young man once who told me he had never had a conversation with a romantic partner that lasted more than an hour without one of them checking their phone. He was not complaining. He was just reporting. This was normal for him. This was what relationships looked like. He had no memory of anything else. No experience of what it felt like to be with someone in unbroken presence. The interrupted, fragmented, constantly mediated form of relating was not a degradation from something better. It was just how things were. I thought about what he was missing, not in a condescending way, in a grieving way. He had never experienced the terror and thrill of calling someone on the phone without knowing what you would say. He had never sat with someone in a car for hours, talking about nothing, with no option to check out. He had never been bored with someone and discovered what was on the other side of boredom. Because there is something on the other side. When you stay present past the point where you want to reach for distraction, something opens. A deeper layer, a quieter space. The conversation that only happens after the small talk runs out. But you have to earn that space. You have to stay. You have to resist the pull of the screen. And if you have never known that space existed, you do not know what you are missing. You do not even know to miss it. This is what haunts me. Not the people who remember what intimacy felt like and are mourning its loss, but the people who never knew, who grew up in the permanent light, who have never experienced the darkness where Eros lives. What do you tell them? How do you describe a color they have never seen? And maybe that is the hardest part of all this. Not that we have lost something, but that some people never had it in the first place. The garden was paved over before they ever saw it bloom, and yet, I have to believe there is something that survives. Some capacity that is older than the screens. Some part of us that still knows what presence means, what touch means, what it feels like to be in a room with someone and have the door actually closed. The myth of Eros and Psyche does not end with his flight. It continues. Psyche is devastated. She searches for Eros everywhere. She is given impossible tasks, sorting seeds, gathering golden fleece, descending to the underworld itself. Each task seems designed to destroy her. Each task seems insurmountable, but she completes them. Not because she is strong, but because she cannot stop. Because the love she experienced in the darkness was real, and she would do anything to recover it. In the end, Zeus himself intervenes. Psyche is granted immortality. She is reunited with Eros. They have a daughter named Pleasure. But here is what I find most important. Psyche does not get Eros back by promising never to look at him again. She gets him back by proving that she can survive the looking, that she can move through the world of light and still carry within her the memory of the dark. The point is not to return to a world without screens. That world is gone. The point is to create spaces within this world where the screens cannot follow. I want to talk about what I call the secret garden. This is not a metaphor from the myth. This is something else. A secret garden is a space that is not documented, a moment that is not shared, a part of your life that does not exist online. It might be a conversation you had that you never told anyone about, a place you went that you did not photograph, a feeling you experienced that you did not post, a part of yourself that you show to one person and no one else. In a world of total transparency, the secret garden is an act of resistance. It is a refusal to turn everything into content, a declaration that some things are sacred because they are hidden. I have started to cultivate secret gardens deliberately, meals I do not photograph, trips I do not document, moments with people I love that I protect from the audience, that I keep in the darkness where they can grow. It feels strange at first. The impulse to share is so deep now that not sharing feels like a kind of loss, like the moment did not fully happen if no one else witnessed it. I remember the first time I consciously chose not to photograph something beautiful. I was watching a sunset with someone I loved, and I felt the pull, the phone in my pocket, the urge to capture, the thought this would be a perfect shot. And then a different thought. What if this one is just for us? What if this moment does not need to be shared? What if the audience does not get to see this one? I left the phone in my pocket. I watched the sunset without documenting it. And something strange happened. The moment became more vivid, more present, more real. Without the camera, I actually saw it. Without the audience, I actually felt it. The colors were not content. They were just colors, and they were enough. I have been practicing this. It is harder than it sounds. The impulse to share is compulsive now. It fires automatically. See something beautiful, document it. Feel something meaningful, post it. Have an experience, content. But every time I resist, something grows in the space that opens. A kind of privacy, a kind of ownership. The feeling that this moment belongs to me, not to the feed. That my life is not raw material for an image. That I am not performing. The secret garden is not a place. It is a practice. It is the repeated choice to keep something for yourself, to let something exist without witnesses, to have a part of your life that the audience cannot see. And I have noticed that the things I do not share become the things I remember most vividly, as if the act of not documenting forces me to actually experience, to encode the memory in my body rather than outsourcing it to the cloud. The documented life is not more remembered. It is less remembered. The photos become a substitute for memory, not a supplement. You remember that you took the photo. You do not remember the moment. But the secret garden is yours. It lives in your body. It cannot be deleted or lost in a server migration. It is the part of your life that is actually yours. It feels strange at first. The impulse to share is so deep now that not sharing feels like a kind of loss, like the moment did not fully happen if no one else witnessed it. But something else grows in that space, something that cannot grow under constant illumination, the fragile thing that needs darkness to survive. I think intimacy might be like that, a plant that can only grow in shade, a flower that only blooms at night. So what does this mean, practically? What does it look like to love in a world of screens? I do not have a program. I do not have 5 steps. I am suspicious of anyone who claims to have solved this, but I have some observations. The first is that presence is a practice. It does not happen by accident. You have to choose it. You have to put the phone in another room. You have to close the door. You have to create conditions where presence is possible. The second is that mystery is a gift you give someone, not knowing everything about them, not surveilling their online presence, letting them remain opaque, letting them surprise you. This is not naivety. It is an act of love. The third is that vulnerability cannot be optimized. The parts of yourself that most need to be loved are the parts that perform worst. Showing them is a risk, but the risk is the point. Without risk, there is no love, just transaction. The fourth is that choosing is not losing. Committing to one person is not closing doors. It is opening a different kind of door, a door that only opens when the others are closed. The depth that only becomes possible when you stop chasing breadth. And the fifth is that some things should remain in the dark, not because they are shameful, but because they are sacred, because they belong to you and one other person, because the audience has no right to them, because the lamp does not need to be lit. Eros fled the light, but he did not flee Psyche. He fled being seen, being fixed, being reduced to an image that could be examined and evaluated and consumed. In the darkness, he could be infinite. He could be whatever she needed him to be. He could be the weight beside her, the warmth around her, the voice in her ear. In the light, he was just a body, just a face, just another object to be looked at. I wonder sometimes if that is what we have done to love itself, dragged it into the light, made it visible, made it content, made it something to be documented and shared and performed. And love, like Eros, has fled. Not entirely, not permanently, but fled to the margins, to the spaces we have not yet illuminated, to the secret gardens we have not yet paved. Here is what I want to leave you with. You have not lost the capacity to love, but you may have lost the conditions that make love possible. The darkness, the invisibility, the closed room, the absent audience. The screens did not make you incapable of love. They made you incapable of the environment that love requires. They flooded everything with light. They invited the audience into every room. They made you a performer in a show that never ends. But you can create spaces where the show stops. You can close doors. You can turn off lamps. You can choose not to document, not to share. not to perform. You can build a secret garden. It will not be easy. The impulse to reach for the phone is deep now. The audience feels more real than the person in front of you. The image has become more comfortable than the flesh. But somewhere inside you, there is a memory of what it felt like to be with someone in the dark, to not know what they look like, to know them only by touch, by voice, by presence. That memory is Eros, waiting to return. Psyche lit the lamp because she could not bear not knowing. She needed to see. She needed certainty. She needed the comfort of the image. But the image cost her everything. And when she finally got Eros back, it was not by seeing more. It was by learning that some things do not need to be seen, that some things are destroyed by seeing, that the darkness was not a limitation, but a gift. You live in a world of lamps, a world where everything is lit, a world where seeing is the default and hiding is suspicious. But you do not have to light every room. You do not have to document every moment. You do not have to let the audience in everywhere. You can still find someone. You can still close the door. You can still lie in the dark and know them by touch, by voice, by the weight of their body beside yours. You can still love, but only if you are willing to stop looking, only if you are willing to let the lamp go out, only if you are willing to meet Eros in the place where he has always lived, in the darkness, in the secret, in the garden that no one else can see.